All right, so I'm watching this. I'm watching this video. It's Gary Stevenson. Your kids will be poorer than you. Professor G conversations with the Prof G Pod. It's Scott Galloway and Gary's economics doing something together. I saw this part. I love this part of it because I saw it clipped. And this is where Gary's talking about. I reference this all the time, and I try to, whenever I can talk about it in a video, because I would tell people more this, I would tell this to people more in person, but I don't have anyone to talk to it about anymore. So this is when Gary basically talks about the whole, like, 30, 40 years after World War II, when tax rates were basically 90%. The upper bracket, the uppermost bracket of tax rates were basically 90%. I like to say the reason for that was commies, and pretty much Reagan stopped that because the communists were beaten. That's basically what happened. So I think I think we can get that legislation passed again because of China. So China's on the board again. Scratch that. China's on the board. We have communist enemies. We need 90% tax. We need tax everywhere, but that commies underneath we got commies in the soup. So tax everybody. Tax. Sing the song, tax, to defeat the communists. Learn the song, sing it every day. We have to beat China, raise taxes. So yeah, but he's talking a lot about that's why we have that. And his little thing here about we did that because how did it go?
Of those 30, 40 years where we thought, everything could just be perfect for everyone. And we forgot that the last 2,000 years of human history is everybody being unbelievably fucking poor while
everybody being unbelievably fucking poor. All right, so I say 6,000 years because agriculture pretty much started around 4,000 BC, maybe even 10,000 BC or something like that. I don't know. Somewhere in that area. Depending upon what kind of historian or biological historian, whatever, scientist, researcher you want to go with. Or if you want to be a little more crazy, it started 10 to 12,000 BC. Humanity went through something, and then there was a cataclysm, and then because there's, well, whatever. Now I'm getting on a tangent again. Because but yeah, he talks about stuff like that, and yeah, tax rich. He just said not let 10 people own own everything. And that's the history of Europe. Yeah, exactly. And he's forgetting South America, where they had one Emperor God King Montezuma, I want to say, who had a, let's not forget, literal city or temple built out of gold bricks. That's how the story goes or something. I don't know. Yeah, the stories from the conquistadors or whatever say he had like a castle or whatever made out of gold bricks. I think they killed him, and they disassembled everything, took all the bricks, put it on like 3 ships, and all the ships sank except for one, and like the one that wasn't holding the gold bricks, the ones that were holding the gold bricks sank because there was a storm, and the one that wasn't holding the bricks was the only one that survived the storm. That's your 4 caravels or whatever, 3 of them that are loaded down with that much gold sank to the bottom. Which, by the way, if you want to find some gold and you're an intrepid explorer of the deep sea, well, that'll probably be a lot of gold, and it'll be all nice and melted down into bricks. So there you go. You just have to figure out where they sank. And it's probably not all that difficult to predict where they sank. So, send your computer to figure out where they sank. Anyways, we continue. And he just said, if you allow the people with all the wealth and the power to use their wealth and power to take all the wealth and power, they will do just that. And it's like, yes, exactly. It reminds me of RPGs, of playing RPGs and video games. Because that's what you do. You use in the game, you use your power-ups and stuff to power level and get more power so that you can get more power faster and get items and skills and techniques and abilities so that you can get more power and stuff. And like in Final Fantasy X, you can get like on the sword, you can get you can put 3 power-ups or abilities on your sword, your weapon, whatever. It's a sword for the main character. And then activate an ability on your guy such that the experience that you get from a battle, instead of getting like 5 or 10,000 XP from a battle, you can get like 10 million XP from a battle, and then just you'll level up like that. It's the same thing that's the thing with gaming. It's just like you'll exploit the system, and that's kind of what rich people do. It's just they're just abusing the system. They're abusing the concept of not cumulative interest, but crap, Sig went up. Of compound interest. And there's a quote by, I think it was Benjamin Franklin, that said compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't just mean with money. I mean, he was talking about money, but I think he was also famous for saying something like, talking about banks being more dangerous than standing armies. Banking institutions being more dangerous than standing armies too, something like that. Something akin to that. And he's talking about standing armies, and he lived in the time of the British and the American Revolution and all of that stuff. And he was warning about banking institutions, financial institutions and stuff. So, and he made that comment about that I just said about compound interest. So, and Gary also talked about compound interest with his comment on these guys that have $300 billion, he was saying 5% interest. Well, if they only get 2% interest on $300 billion, 2% on $300 billion, that's $6 billion, right? 300? 33. 1% on $300 billion is $3 billion. So 2% would be $6 billion just for sitting at home drinking beer, not doing anything. That would be $6 billion. Gary was talking about 5% interest. So if you tax, he was talking about 5%. So if you tax 90% of that $15 billion, they would still be getting $1.5 billion, right? They would still be netting $1.5 billion. From sitting in this chair every year. How would you like to just get $1.5 billion? You just get it. Because 1.5 times 10 is 15. So you just get 1.5. That's if we tax him at 90%. And Gary's talking about a 40% tax minimum in this conversation. 40% would be $1.5, $3, $6 billion. That would just be $6 billion out of the $15 billion. They'd be getting $9 billion still. $9 billion. $9 billion. So that's what I'm saying. That like 90 to 92% that was going on in like the 50s-ish era, they would still be getting more than $1 billion. And that's the individual that has 300 billion in combined assets. That's not Elon Musk's 500 or whatever billion dollars in assets that's compounding annually through various methods. So everybody needs to just let that simmer in their brains. And because they are so rich, they're usually not making 2% or 5%. They're usually making something higher than 10% on that. I know savings accounts. Savings accounts make less than 0.5%. They make 0.3%, maybe less than 0.3%. Now, they used to when I was a little kid, they used to earn something right around 3%. 3%. Today, if there was a savings account, a regular old savings account that would give me 3%, I would put money in that savings account. I would have money in that savings account, and I would let it sit because I don't really spend stuff. But that would be a good yearly earnings on a savings account. Anyways, let's get back. I'll be right back. Yeah, and Scott Galloway said, "Oh, middle class was an accident in history," and blah blah blah, and they're having a kind of a back and forth. And yeah, it wasn't an accident in history and all this stuff because the industrialists, and anyone can look this kind of stuff up. The industrialists, the rich people, have always fought against labor and labor rights and increasing labor wages. Any and all of these people that have businesses and have had employees, they always fight against giving you 1 penny more. They're always, and it's like, it's just like, it doesn't matter the time that it was in, whatever time it was in, whatever era it was in, it was like, oh, labor costs are through the roof. And they're always looking for the next thing they can use to be like, well, I'll just do this to drive down labor costs. And it's just like, just pick your time, pick your decade or your century, and you'll find your excuse. Your decade, your century, your place in the world, your industry, and there it is. It could be slavery in the South of the United States. It could be the coal riots. It could be the sawmills in the northwest of America. It could be the gold mines. I mean, it could be anywhere in just the past 50 or 100 years. It could be somewhere in India. I mean, it could be in China before, modern day China. They're probably doing it now that it's getting all capitalisty. It could be somewhere in Japan. I'll bet it happened in Japan somewhere. Probably in Australia, anyone, anywhere. It's all over the place. Anytime somebody owns something, I'll bet it happened a lot in Russia because Russia was not, and I'm talking about communist Russia because, that wasn't socialism. I mean, everybody who's against socialism loves to be like, that was socialism and it failed. It wasn't socialism. I mean, it was, a bunch of people that owned everything. And the vast majority of people that did not own everything And then the ruling elite were like, it's communism. It's, utopia, Marxist, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, that's, we're going to advertise it as one thing. And, bait and switchy kind of garbage. The only real socialism I've ever seen was in Star Trek. It was in a fictional thing that hasn't existed in reality. That's the closest thing I've seen, and that that's arguable how much that's totally dependent upon theoretical technology too. So whatever. Let's sally forth. Okay, and now he's saying the UK was great. It was probably the number one economy in the West in 2008, and then they started austerity, and ever since then, now it's crap. And he also said, look at the U.S. It's basically started austerity in a big way, slashing the state in 2024, and he says, if you're in the U.S., you should take a look at what we did in the UK. And we're already seeing that our country, Americans, it's starting to tank already. So maybe we should not let that continue. And I'm on the bandwagon with that. I've been on the bandwagon with that since before, since like 5 years, 6 years, 8, 10, 20 years ago, when I was even smoking pot. That's right, when I was stoned on my ass, I still knew that everything they were doing was bad. So I could be stoned 6 ways from Sunday and still know Republicans don't know dick from shit. But I mean, it's pretty much. I mean, they can get elected. They can get elected, do garbage, and get elected again. Do garbage and get elected, do again. Do garbage again, and just keep getting elected, basically just by saying, no abortion, hate gays, brown people suck. Just by tickling that little Pinkerton of yours on all these little nice feelings, anti-gay, and just by twiddling those emotions that some of you have, and it's very aggravating. It's very aggravating. I am fat, but it also does help people see me because this shirt is blue. Okay, yeah, they just said nobody wants to pay tax. And before Gary said nobody wants to pay tax, dude, what's his name? Scott Galloway said, I hate paying taxes. It's like, well, and that's another fundamental problem with, I think, Western civilization in general. People don't like paying taxes. You know what I don't like paying? I don't like paying tips. I hate paying tips. I especially hate paying tips that are forced on there. I don't mind paying a tip if I choose to pay a tip. Like if it's genuinely a like, oh sure, I'll pay. But nowadays, I've never been in a situation where I actually was like, oh, here's a tip. Like I think I actually may have kind of recently, but I don't recall exactly what it was. But I used to. I used to be. But almost every time I tipped, it was in those kinds of like, oh, you're delivering my food. That's right, I'm supposed to tip. It's those, I'm supposed to tip because we're supposed to tip you. You go out to eat, someone's serving you food, you're supposed to tip. When a tip is something you're supposed to do, it takes away all the magic in it. You know, if I have to tip you, then whether by or then there's no real point in it. You know, and I really don't like that. You know, because I don't mind paying taxes. I don't mind paying a sales tax. You know why? Because it's a tax. It goes to fund the roads and schools and stuff. And yes, it goes to fund wars too, but at least in theory, up until Trump, there, you know, we had, there was a reason. We didn't just go willy-nilly fight wars. Wars. Sometimes they were, they had to, but the more conservative you were, the more you were like, I don't like giving money to the government. But like taxes, like I never really had that much of a problem paying taxes. Even, when I was working, it was like I don't really care about paying taxes out of my paycheck. It doesn't matter. I don't see why everybody is so against taxes. Taxes do something. They do work. You always, I say this when I talk about taxes a lot. You should be proud to pay taxes. You should be proud that you're in a country where you vote, you pay taxes, and you can demonstrate, and you can say fuck you to the cops, and you do all of these things, and they all exist together. Because in other countries, you pay taxes, you can't vote, and you can say fuck you to the cops, but different things will happen to you there than here. And you pay taxes, and the roads are still dirt. And you say fuck you to the cops, and you might not be. Where did John go? I don't know. Last time I saw him, he was saying fuck you to the cops. So I guess we don't say fuck you to the cops anymore. You get hit with taxes? Yeah. Roads are still crap. Yep. Just another day in third country. And we may complain about cracks or the a pothole, but there are roads, and we have electricity, and blah 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 blah. So And for the most part, we have schools. They kind of suck, but they're there. So you bitch too much about taxes. And the best thing probably is that you have the ability to complain about taxes. Every voting cycle, you complain that taxes are too high. Notice all the words there. Every voting cycle, you complain about taxes. Every word there is crucial. So I will say that America sucks, and I will say it's also great. So I won't say it's the greatest, but I'll say it sucks and it's great. And, I think I just exploded a whole bunch of conservatives' heads right there by saying, America sucks and it's great. Like, how is that possible? That liberal lefty can say both of those things. Well, yeah. Didn't I just explode your brain cells straight out through your butthole? Yeah. Well, and it ends in, Gary says he wants people to always be able to be like, yes, inequality is the problem of our day, and he wants everybody to recognize that. I just say, the problem is billionaires. It's easier to just kind of recognize, remember, and billionaires are just, it's just quicker. It just rolls off your tongue faster, easier, and it's just, it's just simpler. Wealth inequality is the problem. That's like, oh, so I got to go to math class to know what that is? Billionaires. Billionaires are the problem. Now, more specifically, somebody with accumulated total asset values of, let's say, 45 million plus are where we need to target our wealth tax and above, blah, 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 and all these big nuanced phrases. That's really what we're going for, are the problem. Now, that's too long and stuff, but billionaires are the problem. That's nice and easy. You can put it on a shirt. Billionaires are the problem, or, whatever. So, anyways, that was a good video. Again, the video was Gary Stevenson, your kids will be poorer than you. Professor G, Prof G Conversations. If anybody watches this, but nobody will. Those are my thoughts, and I'm hot as balls. I got a shower in today, but man, I feel like I'm sweating. Two big, giant, black nutsacks. All right. Tax the rich, we kept the rich. And like Gary always says, tax wealth, not work. Wow. Boobs. Boobs out, people.